Minister, this is the third use of my Leader's questions in just over 3 months to raise the issue of the need and the urgent need for a Savvy report, the Sexual Assault and Violence in Ireland report. I raised it in June or July, I raised it again in October. In addition, such is the seriousness and significance of the issue that has been raised by many deputies in this stall, including Deputy MacDonald, Deputy Coppinger, Deputy Shortall at Leaders' Questions, as well as any amount of Dáil questions tabled by TDs, including Deputy O'Leary, Deputy Anne Rabbitte. In fact, almost every political grouping in this stall has asked for a Savvy 2. Indeed, Deputy Martin launched the original Savvy 1 when he was Minister for Health in 2002, and one of the essential recommendations in that report is that there would be a follow-up research. Moreover, the Taoiseach and her own positive work on the ground has been recognised by the organisations, and back in September 16, more than a year ago, she confirmed to Deputy Coppinger that she had an open mind on commissioning a second report. If the money can be found, she said, I will ensure it will be done, if the money can be found. It also seems that Minister Sapone, Minister Doherty and I am sure all of the female TDs in the Fine Gael party are behind this. Yet, 15.5 years later, there is no Savvy 2. Moreover, and one has to ask why, and it seems the responses from the Taoiseach and from the Department of Justice are the clue. And while the Taoiseach, and was very welcome, confirmed that he had an open mind to a Savvy 2, he went on to give other responses that the existing statistical evidence that was there was perhaps sufficient, while ignoring the limitations of that European research, which is limited to women only, which is a very small group of people, and many other deficits in that research. He referred to Garda reports, which we all know cannot be relied on. He referred to existing organisations coming up with information. And we know that, for example, Taoiseach, and if you could even hear this part, the Rape Crisis Network announced on the 19th of October this year that it was not in a position to publish statistics on the experiences of sexual violence. It had no longer had the capacity, and so on. And so what I am clearly asking for you is simply to listen to the majority of parties in this stall who have said, please carry out a Savvy 2. And the problem is that there is a failure to understand on the Department of Justice, because shortly after the Minister confirmed he had an open mind, the Department of Justice reportedly in the paper said no second Savvy would be carried out. Now, there is a fundamental failure to understand that this research was a qualitative piece of research that was absolutely necessary and is necessary to follow up, to inform debate, to inform the type of services that we will provide. My time is up.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. No, first of all, I fully acknowledge the sincerity with which the Deputy is putting forward this, and I think there is no doubt that we need to be legislation and policy in this area has to be informed by the best possible research. I understand that there is a task force which is scoping out this area of research to see whether it would be appropriate and necessary to conduct the sort of review that you say. There are discussions going on between departments. There is a review of the information available already from within departments and the CSO and other agencies to establish the existing research base. And I understand there is consultations with non-governmental organisations to assess this. Obviously, if at the end of that it is clear that we need to undertake additional research into this issue to better inform policy, a decision will be made by government in the normal way. But in such a circumstance, it would be remiss if government did not make sure that we assessed all of the available evidence to date and make sure that in making a decision and commissioning further work, we have narrowed down exactly where the gaps are and the issues that need to be on which we need additional and new information. And I understand that is the approach being taken. I confess I am not an expert in this particular field, but I will clearly alert my colleagues to your concern and that this work that's ongoing should be brought to a conclusion as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Minister.
And I don't expect you to be an expert, but I do expect you to take on board the concerns. And if that many TDs and leaders of various political groupings have raised this matter consistently, obviously there's a problem. And we're learning about that problem from the experts on the ground. And I do welcome that you're in consultation now with the experts on the ground. But at this point, there has to be an absolute admission from the government that a savvy type 2 report is absolutely necessary 15 and a half years later, so that we can develop policy and develop proper legislation to deal with it within that subgroup. And the Savvy report, and it's important to point out, was men and women. And the statistics are absolutely frightening. And 47% of those that participated, out of 3,200 or 100, confirmed they had never mentioned it to anyone in their lives. The other statistics I don't have time to go into. However, I believe that the obstacle is simply money. Now, if that could be dealt with, and from a government that put 4 or 5 million into a propaganda unit, really it's hard to take it seriously when your own Taoiseach said that a savvy was necessary if she could find the money.
Thank you, Deputy.
So I'd like deadlines at this point.
Minister, to conclude, please.
Well, obviously, I'm not in a position to offer deadlines, but clearly, I've worked in the research field myself. The first thing that you always do is make sure that you survey what is already available before you commission further work to identify the gaps. And I think it is prudent for government to take the approach that's been taken. I should say that it's not holding back very important investment of real resources, like organisations who are dealing with domestic and sexual violence are receiving funding of 22.1 million, and that's increased this year. The Minister for Justice is proceeding with legislation in the field of domestic violence, as you know. So there is ongoing work while the need for this sort of a study is being evaluated.
Thank you, Minister. On behalf